This is the very last case study called Hydro One, and it's by Daniel, Allison, Nee, and Esther. Just a little overview, we are going to go about the background, the challenges, strategic objectives, the ERM process, and the value of the ERM process. Just a little background about this. Hydro One was founded in 1906 as Ontario Hydro. The company's main objective was to generate power at Niagara Falls for distribution to municipal utilities. After some time, Ontario Hydro had grown its facilities to generate and transmit 30,000 megawatts and was able to export electricity to other provinces and the US. In 1998, the Ontario government deregulated the province's electric power industry, which caused Ontario Hydro to be restructured as two separate organizations. One was a power generation utility, and the second is a combined transmission or delivery business called Hydro One. Hydro One is headquartered in Toronto and consists of three businesses, including transmission, distribution, and telecommunications. Under the direction of Sir Graham Day, Hydro One's board had prepared a mandate to prepare Hydro One for its initial public offering. There are two growing concerns regarding Ontario's electricity system, and the IPO offered in 2002 by Hydro One was to raise $5.5 billion to upgrade Ontario's transmission infrastructure and pay down a $4.5 billion debt that was owed to the government. After preparing an IPO prospectus and presenting to investors, Hydro One received media backlash for the private sector level salaries of the management team. This led to fallout between the board and the government, and the board's eventual resignation. After the board was replaced, a trade union went to court to obtain a ruling that created a legal barrier to privatization. After the IPO controversy, the board appointed Tom Parkinson as CEO. He continued to follow the previous value creation strategy set by the previous CEO that included the implementation of enterprise risk management, a risk-based investment planning system, and a balanced scorecard that had a strong emphasis on customer service. After Parkinson's appointment, Hydro One faced several challenges that would test its ERM process. Hydro One was a power supplier, and as such, the initial focus was on providing only the commodity. There was no focus on customer service at the time, as it was not necessarily considered important as a business strategy. There are several risks that Hydro One faced. One of the main risks is managing the current deregulated environment. After splitting off from Ontario Hydro, Hydro One inherited an aging electricity system that required major updates. Additionally, unusually hot conditions in the spring and summer of 2002 led to increased energy consumption, as well as increased costs to customers. This contributed to the Ontario Energy Board mandating lower distribution rates for customers. Unfortunately, this did not decrease customer usage. The lower rates in the combination with high energy output and the funds needed to maintain aging equipment directly impacted the company's overhead, putting a constraint on the capital needed for maintenance and system upgrades. As it becomes necessary to cut costs, Hydro One launched an efficiency and cost-cutting initiative that led to the departure of 140 staff members and a hiring freeze. Employees involved in this cost cut were given early retirement options at this time. After a failed IPO attempt, continuing efforts over the next few years to cut costs eventually led to an 18-week strike by 800 employees in 2005 who protested a proposed decrease in benefits to new union employees. In 2006, Laura Formusa, a 30-year-old employee, took over the role of CEO for Hydro One. She had a vision to help the organization clearly meet its strategic objectives. While most of the objectives have not been changed, the risk exposures had. In order to accomplish the task of ensuring the strategic objectives remain plausible, management from all disciplines needed to better understand the organizational risks it faced as a whole. There were three risks Hydro One faced. The first was strategic risks such as the aging workforce and the customer satisfaction. The company recognized that the workforce moved into retirement and there was not enough skilled people in the younger workforce to replace them. Additionally, students were not training in this field of work. As far as customer satisfaction, it remained an important risk as this impacted the company's reputational risk. In the past, poor media and public relations made life challenging not only for the company but the customers and employees as well. Employees were embarrassed to be working for the company, and the negative publicity made it difficult for them to interact with their neighbors. One of the company's initiatives was to bring itself into a more customer-focused business versus a commodity business by increasing transparency and communication. The second is operational risks such as employee safety and aging equipment, which were a challenge as well. Inherent risks of the industry included employee exposure to long hours and inclement weather. It was very important to provide high priority to ensuring the safety of the employees. Additionally, the equipment was designed to last for 60 to 70 years, but not much of it was due for replacement. This requires budgetary considerations in order to purchase and install new equipment. The third is financial risks, which were always a major consideration in any business. Historically, at Hydro One, departments were given budgets based on personal management views, not with the company's strategic objectives in mind. This led to the funds being utilized as individual departments felt were important, but not necessarily as the best use of their funds for the sustainability of the organization as a whole. Financial risks were pretty much tied to any risk in the company, as everything comes down to the cost of implementing a new program or policy and the benefits of doing so. Number 4 is more difficult risks to predict, including regulatory risks. These risks included challenges such as governmental influence in rates or processes, environmental conditions such as location or feasibility of new projects, or even conditions involved in maintaining existing facilities. One example of regulatory risk that was when Hydro One was trying to prepare to evolve its business. They needed to get new computer programs up and running and had to keep investing in the project. There was a specific timeline yet, and even without regulatory approval, they had to keep moving forward in hopes that the regulator would make a determination in their favor. This was an expensive endeavor that did not pay off. Environmental situations also can play a major role in the financial risk of an organization. No matter how much risk businesses try to predict all risks, it may not be able to accurately forecast or predict what new legislation may implement. In one case, new legislation costs the company over $250 million in order to comply. And lastly, either unforeseen or unexpected challenges with the human factor, such as the challenge Hydro One faced when their new construction process was halted due to their building on Aboriginal land. This list of actual risks identified is much longer, but this gives a high-level overview of some of the main considerations. After breaking off from Ontario Hydro, Hydro One embraced business practices and cultural changes that centered around consumer-focused service ethos, cost-cutting, enterprise risk management, performance management, and strategic planning. With Formosa at the helm, Hydro One embraced a strategic plan to make it the best transmission and distribution business in North America. It would achieve this vision through 4 strategic objectives: safety, reliability, customer satisfaction, and operational efficiency. Hydro One believed that safety was their number one objective. They were conscious that safety was their highest risk and believed that their safety record was a direct reflection of the firm's success. They also believed that it was important to be a consumer-focused service organization. In order to demonstrate this, Hydro One believed it was important to be in the top quartile of transmission and distribution reliability, as well as maintain a 90% customer satisfaction rating across all segments. Another aspect of their business practices, Hydro One had adopted surrounded performance management. To operate and perform well, Hydro One believed it had to be in the top quartile of employee productivity and operating efficiency. They also felt it important to maintain an A credit rating to demonstrate to the public that the strategic plan was successful, as well as demonstrate their creditworthiness. Hydro One was one of the first companies in Canada to develop enterprise risk management. This was the response of the Toronto Stock Exchange being one of the first exchanges that required list companies to implement high-level strategic risk management. This is when Hydro One introduced their three-phase enterprise risk management program. Phase 1 began because Fraser believed that enterprise risk management started with the top management agreeing about their strategic risk objectives and moving on from there to develop the shared understanding of the principal risks faced by the organization. Before the start of a risk workshop, the risk team polled managers and drew up a list of 60 to 70 potential risks or threats to the topic of discussion and asked the participating management team to select the 10 most critical risks. The risk team narrowed the list to 8 to 10 risks and used the Delphi method to vote. The Delphi method was a combination of facilitated discussions as well as anonymous voting technology. They usually asked which of our stated business objectives are most threatened by the risk and to what degree. Phase 2 included reviewing the corporate risk profile. The risk team would prepare a corporate risk profile report which summarized the principal risks facing the organization for the executive team. Fraser then set up a series of interviews with the top 30 to 40 executives. The ERM process stressed the importance of these meetings because risks do not remain static. Therefore, in order to make sure the objective impacts matrix remained relevant, they had to remain accountable. The final phase of the ERM process, the investment planning department and the risk team developed a risk-based approach for allocating resources. This meant they evaluated each investment proposal in the terms of cost and severity of the risk. The team calculated a bang for the buck index to show the risk reduction per dollar they had spent, and then ranked the investment program according to the ranking. Hydro One's ERM process was one of Toronto's first risk management system put in place. With a three-phase ERM process in place, it allows Hydro One's management to gain communication in workshops and one-on-one meetings. There is a collective understanding of the risks involved in the company, so everyone is on the same page, as well as resource allocation based on risk to be able to better benefit the company. Techniques utilized at Hydro One are very similar to those used at JPL. For example, both organizations had methods for categorizing the likelihood of a risk as well as the impact on the company should the risk occur. Both organizations increased communications between the various disciplines in order for everyone to have a better respect for each other's needs and also provide an outlet for all personnel to understand that managing risk is company-wide and one risk in one department can definitely impact another department. Similarly, between Hydro One and JPL is having a team whose purpose was to challenge the priorities of the risks. For example, according to the multimedia case article, the engineers at Hydro One were responsible for making the initial risk assessments, and the investment planning department relentlessly challenged the risks and the cost assessments to focus the priorities as well as help the engineers better prepare for their presentations to senior management. The biggest difference between Hydro One and JPL ERM programs is that the JPL program is project specific, with the ERM program starting and ending with each project independently, whereas the ERM program at Hydro One is based on the company as a whole and its long-term sustainability. Both programs are successful as they were designed to provide a structure to help meet the needs of the objectives. For the conclusion, nothing happens overnight. Most management goals of risk mitigation need to be tangible with achievable timelines in the 2 or 3 year time frame. The risk workshops and the ERM program not only increase communication and collaboration amongst the various disciplines, but it helps them stay on track of the goals by looking at each risk individually and agreeing as a group whether or not the risk mitigation adds value to the organization as a whole and meets the needs of the strategic objectives. As a result, Hydro One is now better positioned to revisit ongoing challenges as environment, policies, and public perception change than it was 5 years ago.